Heljan have really become the kings of the crispness of the detail application. Hi there, hope you survived Christmas and New Year okay. We got some more goodies to get ourselves through, some box openings and reviews, so without further ado, let's take a look at this great locomotive that I picked up just before Christmas. Well, what we've got here is I picked up one of the Heljan Class 5 diesel shunters. Now, Heljan are the kings of the kind of more esoteric and unusual of the BR diesels, and this particular one's no exception. We've got a catalogue number, it's item 2521, and this is D2600, BR green with Wasp stripes, and we've got it in the pretty standard Heljan box. And the way these go together, we've got the outer sleeve, we're gonna ditch that, and then we've got, it's actually pretty reminiscent of both Bachmann and Hornby's more up-to-date locomotive packaging. They're actually pretty good. I think it's much better than having all that polystyrene, and we've got the kind of double-walled card going on in there. Tucked away in the bottom, we've got some of the instructions for things like running in. It actually gives you an idea on, if I show you that there, it actually shows you all of the different bits that went into making this. That's actually quite incredible. So I suppose if you were feeling flush and subject to all of these spare parts being available, you could actually build one of these out of parts, but I suspect that it'd be very, very expensive. Also gives you a few little ideas here on what to do if you want to DCC chip these, and also, you know, just generally dismantling if, for example, you want to put a figure in the cab, that sort of a thing. And we've also, on the other side, we've got actually a pretty comprehensive history of the locomotives there. There were 69 of them built by Hunslet, and they were delivered in two separate styles, so some of the cabs are a little bit different. They also made a fairly similar version that was sold on into industry, and I think some of the industrial ones had a more powerful engine, so these can actually be told apart in preservation by their slightly taller bonnets, and that's to contain the larger engine. I think it's about a 60 horsepower extra that it develops. The real ones had an 8-cylinder Gardner engine, and that was coupled with a manual, I think a pneumatic type gearbox. I could be wrong on that, but certainly the driver had to make the gear changes themselves, which led to them being perhaps at times a little bit of a challenge to drive by all accounts. So I'm going to lift this out, put that there. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is there's not really any user-fitted details, except, I don't know whether they're going to come up, there's two little red pieces in there, and these are little plugs so that you can actually remove the couplings, and these plugs plug the gap in the buffer beams to give you that flush front. And it's something that I think Bachmann do it on their new Class 3 as well, and it's pretty nice. I've actually test fitted them on this, and they actually blend in pretty well, and certainly if you're going to do some weathering, then that would actually be quite easy to disguise. We've got the characteristic shape of this particular version replicated in pretty good, actually. They have these very strange shaped windows on the front of the cab, and Heljan have managed to recreate that almost triangular affair really, really well. In some respects, given that these were delivered at the from the end of the 1950s through to about 1961, they were a little bit futuristic in its design. One other thing I notice is if we look at the door into the cab, that is tremendously narrow. So I suspect that some of these may have been a tight squeeze for certain drivers to get in, although the cab itself is very roomy inside there. We've got enough room for 2 crew members quite readily. We can also see the control desks are really nicely done in there. There is a lot of very, very fine detail. These windows on the side too, I think, are particularly finely done. We have it modelled open on this side, and if I turn the locomotive round, we have it modelled closed on the other. So a nice little touch there. The originals of these locomotives weren't necessarily greatly successful. They did the job, they did go on, and a lot of them were sold on into industry and worked quite well. But they were very rapidly replaced on the British rail metals by Class 3 and Class 4 shunters, and they were probably a victim in some respects of standardisation. They worked primarily in the Eastern region and the Scottish region. And one of these was actually taken across on the ferry to the Isle of Wight to be used over there, and actually became the only member of the class to receive their 5-digit TOPS number as 05001, which it carried through till 1981 when it was renumbered into the departmental fleet and then replaced in 1985 by a cut-down Class 3. The model itself, really, it's something that Heljan do very well. I've got quite a few Heljan locomotives, and the attention to detail is very, very fine. The glazing, as I've already touched on, is really, really well done. That is probably the best flush glazing that I've seen. But we've also got a lot of factory-applied details, such as the handrails, including the ones which aren't actually really quite so obvious. They're all separately applied metal. We've got very fine louvre detail and rivet detail on the bonnet sides. We've got separately applied handrails all along the edge there, and I'm just looking, and that is actually very, very finely done. The little handles on the bonnet sides are, again, separately applied, and under close magnification you'll be able to see they look like they could work. They're so fine. We've got representation of all of the steps nicely applied there, and we've got this kind of protective box, and I believe that's probably where, when working in yards, trundling up and down with a shunter, it was somewhere that the shunter could stand, and it probably alleviated the need for the use of shunters' runner wagons. We've got the Wasp stripes very, very smartly applied. I'm looking there, there's no real bleed over whatsoever, and then we've got the Hunslet Works plate reprinted on the top. I'm just looking very closely there. It's very difficult to tell. It looks like it could be a separately applied etched detail part, but actually, saying that, it could also be moulded on and just very, very well finished with the tempo printing. So either way, it is so well done that I see no need for anybody to really need to contemplate changing that for an etched plate. We've got a lot of separately applied pipework on the front there. The coupling as well. We have a fully working 3-link coupling, to the point where actually I tested this with the couplings removed, and they're good enough to use as is out of the box as an alternative and much more prototypical form of coupling. All of the buffers are fully sprung. There's not a great deal of travel on them, but they do work really, really well. Now, one of the big detractions for me is the coupling itself in the NEM pocket. There's some degree of sideways movement in there, but the biggest problem is that they flop up and down. And what I've noticed when I've put this on a test track, just to compare it to other items of rolling stock, is that the coupling droop is enough that they don't really couple up properly to any other items of rolling stock. And I'm actually considering looking into some kind of way of fitting perhaps cranked couplings, just to try and get around the problems with that. So it's something to think about, and certainly it kind of detracts from an otherwise really, really good model to me. One of the things that really, really stands out to me, actually, more than anything else, and it is something that is so subtle that you might ordinarily miss it, but inside the radiator grills at the front, if we look down inside, you can actually see the metal mesh, all painted yellow, so it all matches, it all fits together, so perfect. That is a miniature, perfect rendition of the originals. That level of detail is just truly astounding. Some of the detail on this is actually so fine that you can see there that we've got one of these little stanchions here that's slightly bent. Luckily, it's been moulded in a fairly flexible plastic by the looks of things, so it should be something that's quite easy to repair, but certainly it pays to be super careful with these, especially when taking them in and out of the box, because things like that can quite readily be bent or broken. If we look on the side, the wheel profile is very accurately represented. We've got the jackshaft drive, and that again is really finely done with the counterweights in there, and the side rods too are perfectly reproduced with a degree of fluting on there. Nicely finished in a kind of gunmetal grey livery. I would have wanted one of these in BR Blue, but I picked this up as new second-hand for such a favourable price. I thought, you know what, why not? And I've not been disappointed whatsoever. I haven't yet had a chance to run this, but I've got every confidence that the running characteristics of this model will be nothing but superb. There's a really good weight to it. I'm feeling there's a lot of thought gone into the ballasting of this locomotive, and really, as an addition to the collection, it is a very fine one at that, and it fills a gap in the otherwise somewhat unusual early BR locomotives that didn't necessarily last that long in traffic, other than the one which went over to the Isle of Wight. Tempo printing, we've got a very finely produced BR late crest there, and the lettering as well is very, very crisply applied. We've also got a plate on the doors, and I've got every faith that under magnification all of this is going to be crisp and perfect. In fact, to the point where I would say that Heljan have really become the kings of the crispness of the detail application. All in all, notwithstanding the coupling issues, I'd still give this model a good solid 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Well, I hope that was informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also thanks very much for watching. You really do make this channel work by watching these videos. So until next time, it's very important to me that you take very good care of yourself. So until then, bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.